Welcome back to the Poultry Doc podcast. Today we're breaking down one of the most stressful emergencies backyard chicken keepers can face, an egg-bound hen. We'll cover what it really looks like, why infections, overfeeding, and artificial lighting set hens up to fail, why Epsom salt baths can make things worse, and what to do in the first critical 24 hours to give her the best chance to pass that egg safely. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Poultry Doc podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Blayne, and today we're going to take a look at what to do when you have a potential egg-bound hen. So typically you'll see the first thing is she may be straining and have that kind of penguin-like posture where it looks like she's trying to lay an egg but still walk at the same time. That's pretty common. Later stages, they can get really depressed and lethargic as they just start to feel bad. A lot of times it can also be associated with an infection, so that's going on as well. But when you first notice this, you'll read tons online about giving Epsom salt baths. And my first suggestion there would be really to discourage you from giving a bath. There's actually plenty of literature that discusses how when researchers are trying to induce stress in chickens, they actually submerge them in water. And what they call cold water is 95 degrees, which isn't exactly cold. It's cold to the chicken, again, which goes against giving those baths because what we perceive as warm is actually pretty cold to the chicken. We have to remember their body temperatures are 104, 105, which if we were to get in a 104, 105 bath would feel like scalding hot water. If we get in a 98 degree bath, it feels like bath water, right? So big difference between what we perceive as warm versus cold between these two. So again, putting chicken in water, while they may seem like they're there and comfy, it's a stress response. They just sit there. And have you ever seen a chicken submerge itself in water? The answer is no. So highly discourage submerging chickens in baths. If you're trying to clean them up, that's one thing, but again, don't submerge them. What we really want to do is prevent any sort of stress in this bird, right? So we want to keep it in a small spot, like a small dog carrier, in the dark, in the quiet, so there's no stressors of noise and the temperature's good, so we want to keep it in a warm spot and really give her about 24 hours undisturbed in that environment to try to pass this egg peacefully and quiet and kind of let everything relax and let it happen naturally. So in regards to keeping your hen when she's potentially egg-bound, we really want to reduce stress, and one of the things I say is keeping your bird by itself away from the others is a point of stress in itself. You know, in this case, I think we make a little bit of a sacrifice here, and we want to keep her away. Avoiding the interruption of the sounds and other things that may come from the coop is going to, I think, outweigh the fact that she's separated. So we'll have her in a dark place. It's quiet. It's warm. It's somewhat secluded. So remember that small dog crate, probably covered in a towel, with food and water. So that's important too. She needs feed and water. And just let her relax and don't interrupt. So many people may want to come in and say, has it happened? Has it happened? Anytime you go in there and it hasn't happened, that's, again, kind of restarting that stress response. We want to let her relax and try to do her best to expel that egg. Now, if that doesn't happen, then we need to intervene from a veterinary standpoint, and she may, ideally, you'd take her to an avian vet or, another veterinarian who's capable of seeing chickens. And one, we want to probably start with a radiograph to see, is that truly what's going on? A radiograph will show very easily if she's got an egg in her track. You'll know at that point whether that egg's been in there for at least 24 hours because you've given her a chance to rest. And the veterinarian can make a decision on how to proceed. So there could be steroids to reduce inflammation, which may be counterproductive if there's a bacterial infection going on, or just start with some antibiotics to try to calm down whatever's going on in the reproductive tract. So those are some of the initial options we'll take, and obviously the longer this goes on, the more sick she's going to become. So another thing we can evaluate too, if you're not sure how long this has been going on, is to check her body condition. And if you're reading the forums, you'll see me a lot. One of the first questions I'll ask is, has she lost weight? Has she lost body condition? And so one of the ways you can evaluate body condition, one is just, it's good to handle your birds regularly because you kind of get an idea how much they weigh. Obviously we talked about weighing too, so that's important. This will give you an idea into that. But body condition is really the muscling of her breast is kind of what we're feeling for. You shouldn't really feel easily the keel bone. It shouldn't be very prominent. Certainly you'll feel it, but there should be muscle on either side, and it should sort of be like a V-shaped. You don't want the muscle to indent in. That's a bad sign, another sign that she's losing muscle. And then if it gets really severe, since these birds' metabolism is so high, they'll consume that muscle and fat really quickly, and they'll lose a lot of weight very quickly. So again, body condition just really helps when you're able to handle your birds frequently. You can get an idea what they feel like. Some people can't. I get it. That's another helpful way we can look into how they're feeling by weighing them. So, which also requires handling. But they're your pets, your backyard birds, so it's a good idea to handle them frequently, get an idea of how they're doing from a health perspective. So some of you may wonder just how fast do they lose weight? Well, again, they're burning a lot of calories a day. And if you'll go back to our Purely episode with Nikki, you'll hear me talk about just how many calories go into maintaining body temperature, right? It's a lot of calories. So when this bird stops eating because it's not feeling well, it starts burning those calories, right? First, it's going to burn fat. Well, first it's going to burn sugar, which is glucose, and what this bird is burning, and that's usually stored in the liver, some in the muscle. But it's going to burn sugar. It's going to burn through that pretty quickly. Then it's going to start consuming fat, and when that's gone, it'll also start to consume muscle or protein, and we'll see that happen relatively quickly. Within a few days, they can lose a significant amount of weight, again, especially if they're not eating. So it doesn't take very long for birds to lose weight, days, especially, a week. They're going to start losing a significant amount of weight, and obviously that puts stress on the bird, and again, makes them more vulnerable to infection and other diseases as well. So it's also really important to make sure that these birds continue to drink, right? Eating is important. They have to have those calories, but in order for any of that to work, they have to drink. And so a good sort of point of reference is they need to be consuming about twice as much water as they are feed that they're eating. So if they're eating 100 grams, which is about a round number for average intake for a hen, they really need to be consuming about 200 mils of water. So that goes hand in hand. So that's important as well. Well, how did it happen to begin with, right? So there's a lot of things, a lot of different variables that can affect this hen becoming egg-bound. Probably one of the most common causes of a hen becoming egg-bound would be a bacterial infection, specifically an infection of that reproductive tract. So it could be bacterial, could be viral. Giving antibiotics in that sense, if it's a viral issue, will not help, right? Because antibiotics do not treat viral infections. Usually my first response when a hen does become egg-bound, or we suspect that she's egg-bound, will be just kind of a wait and see approach, right? Put her in the dark, give her 24 hours to try to pass that egg. If that doesn't work, then we can reevaluate and see what's going on. But if we're trying to prevent it, I would say one of the leading causes of a hen becoming egg-bound, especially early, so right when they're coming into production, is really that she's overweight or she's been brought into production too fast. Now those two play together. There's three things that require a hen to really come into production. One is day length, that's obvious, I think we all know that. Two is the amount of protein that she's being fed, so the amount of energy. That amount of energy has to support egg production. And third is her age, right? She just has to be sexually mature. It all has to be functioning and be able to work. Now, if the protein and the day length are there, we can really push her too fast, even though she's ready. She may not be physiologically, the space isn't quite right in terms of space between the pubic bones, and she's not just large enough like her vent size, so that in itself can cause trauma if we induce laying too early. Some of the artificial lighting can cause issues there as well. But if she's overweight, which a lot of people will want to feed more in the wintertime because let's say they're not heating their coop, and they think, okay, well, I can give more feed and give them more energy to offset those added calories that she's burning to try to stay warm. Yes, that's true, but also you have to remember hens really stop laying for the most part, or at least slow down in the wintertime. And it's just like if you've had a dog, a female dog, if you continue, and she was spayed, so you had the dog as a puppy, she's gotten closer to adulthood, you're feeding her the same, then you get her spayed. If you continue to feed her the same, she's going to become overweight. It's about a 30% calorie drop or reduction in calories that we need to take into account if we have a dog and we get her spayed, because there's a lot of energy that's going on in building that reproductive tract, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing with this hen. If she's not laying eggs, that means she's not putting all that energy and effort into building an egg, right? So her calorie demand in the wintertime is going to be less than it is in the summer and warmer months when she's laying. If you're feeding more calories in the wintertime for that extra heat, that is one thing, and they will need more calories for that. But it probably doesn't offset the calories that they aren't consuming or putting towards producing an egg, right? So we've got to keep that in mind. How do you know? Well, it goes back to what we talked about earlier when it comes to weighing our chickens, right? So if if she's gaining a lot of weight in the summer, let's say she's already an adult hen, kind of plateaued out, and all of a sudden now we're going into winter, her egg production has gone down or stopped, you're feeding more, and her weight maybe starts to climb. If we graph that weight, you can see that really easily. That's a sign that there's too many calories going in, and that we probably need to hold off just a little bit too, right? We don't want to get her overweight. And we also remember that those calories are sort of a stimuli in order to get her to go into production. So now if we shift back to a younger hen and we're feeding those extra calories early in the winter, or in the winter before the daylight has started to grow and started to kind of turn into spring, right? So we've got increasing day length. That's a sign up for this bird to start that reproductive process, to start laying eggs again. If we're feeding more energy, that's a sign. And then if she's old enough, that's a sign too, right? So it only takes like 2 or 3 of those to get her to start laying. And if we do it too fast, that can really lead to some of these egg-bound issues, or trauma with like prolapse event. That's another one that can come from her coming into production too soon. So we always want to tie that increase in feed with increasing day length with age, right? So all 3 of those are going to be working in concert together to bring her into production. And we want to make sure that we do that at the right time when she's able to lay without causing any trauma. Thanks for joining into another episode of the Poultry Doc Podcast. I want to give a quick shout out to our founding feathers for all their help in supporting the channel and what we're doing here. And if you're not aware, check out thepoultrydoc.com. Check out the founding feather and all the things that it offers. And we'll see you next week.